Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving deep into social media blunders, medical ethics, and alternative medicine. You've sent us some articles, some YouTube commentary on this controversy in Japan, and well, things got messy.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case. Really shows how hard it is to stay professional in the age of social media, especially for, medical professionals. And it also raises some really interesting questions about, like, why are people so drawn to these alternative therapies? And, the responsibilities that come with influencing people's health choices.
Right. So to set the scene, we have a female cosmetic surgeon, works at a clinic called Tokyo Cosmetic Surgery. And she went to an anatomy training course in Guam, and she thought, hey, why not spice up my social media? But her idea of spicing things up involved selfies with dissected cadavers.
Yeah, needless to say, it did not go over well. Posting those photos publicly, I mean, it just ignited this firestorm of criticism and accusations of unethical behavior, which, I mean, you can understand. It's donated human bodies, right? It's a very sensitive area.
Yeah, for sure. I can see why people were outraged. To make things even more interesting, a well-known Japanese entrepreneur, Takafumi Hori, maybe you know him as Horimon, kind of like the Japanese Elon Musk, weighed in on this whole controversy in a YouTube video.
Yeah. Horimon, he initially called out the surgeon's actions as just a major misstep. Especially, for someone in a profession where you're entrusted with people's lives. He was arguing that, while taking photos in a private educational setting, maybe you could debate that.
Right.
But sharing them publicly is just, blatant disregard, potential impact on the families of the deceased. It just shows a lack of, professional judgment.
Yeah. You'd think someone in that profession would know better, right? So how did the surgeon respond to the backlash? Was there any kind of explanation? Apology?
She claims she was unfamiliar with social media and didn't understand the consequences of her posts.
Wait, seriously, she's playing the I'm new to social media card. Oh, come on. That's just a cop-out these days. Can't really claim ignorance of social media, can you? Especially if you're using it.
Right. And that's where Horimon really pushes back. He says he knows personally that this surgeon is very active on social media, basically calling her defense a straight-up lie.
Whoa. So we've got a potential cover-up on top of the already, questionable behavior. This is getting juicy. Feels like there's more to this story than meets the eye.
There is. Horimon's critique goes deeper than just this one incident. He points to a pattern of, let's say, questionable practices by this surgeon. Specifically, her promotion of unverified alternative therapies on her social media channels.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Tell me more about these therapies. What kind of things was she promoting?
One example is her advocacy for cupping therapy. It's this traditional Chinese medicine practice. They put these heated cups on the skin, supposedly improves blood flow and relieves pain. She even promotes wet cupping, which is a more intense version, actually involves drawing blood.
Whoa, hold on. We're going from questionable selfies to actual medical procedures now. This is getting serious. Did Horimon have anything to say about this?
He seemed particularly bothered by the wet cupping, especially since there's not much scientific evidence to back it up, and there are potential risks like infections and scarring. And it wasn't just a one-time thing either. Horimon claims he actually warned her multiple times about promoting these types of practices.
So we're dealing with a medical professional who's not only making questionable choices on social media, but also actively advocating for potentially harmful treatments, even after being warned. Why is she so into these alternative therapies? Any insight into that?
Well, Horimon shares this anecdote that kind of gives us a peek into her thinking. He describes a time when she prepared this really bland vegetable stir-fry for his group. She was really, really adamant about no MSG, no gluten. Seems like she adheres to a pretty restrictive diet herself.
Okay, so maybe she genuinely believes in these alternative therapies based on her own personal experiences. But even if that's the case, shouldn't a medical professional be a little more cautious about promoting treatments that don't have, solid scientific backing, especially considering how much influence they have on their patients?
That's exactly the ethical dilemma here.
Yeah.
To kind of illustrate his point, Horimon compares the surgeon's situation to this chef he knows, Kisuke Matsushima. This chef advocates for salt-free cooking.
Interesting comparison. How does a salt-free chef relate to all this?
Well, Horimon argues that while the chef's advocacy might be a little out there, it's unlikely to cause any real harm. But when you have a medical professional, someone with a platform promoting unverified therapies, the potential for harm is much, much greater.
That makes sense. People seeking medical advice are probably more likely to trust a doctor, right? Even if the recommendations aren't based on solid evidence.
Precisely. And that's why Horimon is calling for accountability. He's worried that her actions could further damage the reputation of the cosmetic surgery industry in Japan, which already has a, bit of a shaky reputation.
Yeah, I can see that. If people lose trust in medical professionals, especially in a field as sensitive as cosmetic surgery, it can have some serious consequences. What exactly does he think should happen to this surgeon? Did he have any specific actions in mind?
He's urging her to really reflect on her behavior. And he even suggests disciplinary measures, like, potentially even revoking her license if she keeps promoting these unverified treatments.
Wow, license revocation. That's pretty extreme. Shows how seriously Horiman is taking this. He seems to believe that medical professionals have a fundamental responsibility to uphold ethical standards, right? Especially when it comes to the information they're sharing publicly.
Absolutely. And it brings up an important question for all of us. Where do we, as consumers of information, draw the line? Where's the line between personal choice and potentially harmful advice? Especially when it's coming from someone we're supposed to trust, like a medical professional.
That's a great question. It feels like these days the lines between our personal and professional lives are just blurred, and what we do online, the consequences can be much bigger than we realize.
Makes you think about, the power dynamics, right?
Right.
We put so much trust in doctors, especially when it comes to our health. But this situation shows that maybe blind trust isn't always the best approach.
True. We see it all the time, not just with doctors, but influencers, celebrities, even just regular people with big followings. It's like we're more willing to trust some random person online than our own gut feeling.
Like we're looking for easy answers in this crazy world, right? And we kind of turn off our brains to get them. But when it comes to our health, those easy answers can have serious consequences.
You mentioned Horiman was really concerned about her promoting that wet cupping thing. To be honest, I'm not really familiar with it. Could you break it down a bit? What is it, and why is it considered harmful?
Sure. So, like I said earlier, it's a variation of cupping therapy, which has been around for ages and tons of cultures. The basic idea is that you create suction on the skin, and it's supposed to draw out toxins, improve blood flow, things like that.
Okay, interesting concept, but what makes the wet cupping so controversial?
Well, wet cupping goes a step further. They actually make little cuts in the skin before they put the cups on. The idea is to draw out blood along with the toxins. But here's the thing. There's no real scientific evidence that it actually gets rid of toxins or has any real health benefits.
So it's basically a more intense version of something that already doesn't have solid scientific backing.
Exactly. And that's where the harm comes in. Anytime you break the skin, you're risking infection. And there's also a chance of scarring, especially if it's not done properly.
So even though the idea of getting rid of toxins sounds good, we have to remember that our bodies already have ways to detoxify, right? Like our liver and kidneys, those are much more effective than anything you do externally.
Absolutely. It's also worth noting that even the regular dry cupping, while it's usually considered safe, can have side effects like bruising, discomfort, and burns if it's not done right.
This whole situation with the surgeon and wet cupping really makes you think twice about those alternative therapies, right? Even when they're presented as natural or traditional.
Totally. Just because something's been around for ages doesn't mean it's safe or effective.
Yeah. People often think natural means safe, but that's not always true. A lot of things in nature can be harmful if you don't use them correctly.
Right. And then when you consider the influence of someone like this surgeon, someone people trust, it becomes even more worrisome.
I'm curious about Horiman calling for her license to be revoked. Seems like a pretty strong reaction, especially since it was based on social media posts. Is it fair to hold medical professionals to that standard just for what they do online?
That's a tough one. Gets to the heart of professional ethics in the digital age. On the one hand, doctors, they have the right to express their personal beliefs and opinions, same as anyone else.
But they also have a responsibility, right, to their patients and the public to uphold the standards of their profession and not spread misinformation.
Exactly. And when those personal beliefs start to, potentially put patients at risk or erode trust in the medical profession, then it becomes a real concern.
So where do we draw the line? How do we balance free speech with protecting the public from harm, especially in medicine where information can literally be life or death?
It's tricky, and I don't think there's an easy answer. But I think we can all agree that critical thinking and media literacy are super important. We have to be smart about the information we consume, no matter where it comes from, and we need to be willing to question even the experts when we have doubts.
I think you're right. We're so used to just accepting information, especially online. But this case shows that we really need to dig deeper, ask questions, look at different sides, and make informed decisions based on